Listening, joined now by my home state Senator Rob Portman. Senator Portman, welcome back. Always good to speak with you.
Hugh, always great to be on with you, and we look forward to seeing you back in Ohio when this thing clears up.
And now let's talk about your role as a member of the Senate Finance Committee, because that means you've got tariffs under your venue, under your purview, and you've done some great work with U.S. Trade Representative Bob Lighthizer, I should say a native of Ashtabula, Ohio, and therefore
Yep,
very smart.
another Ohioan.
Brother, another Buckeye, and near where I spent my summers in Saybrook. But you had to go to him and get some tariff relief for hand sanitizer. That's going to lead me into general talk about tariff. Tell us about the specifics of that first.
Well, as you know, we have tariffs in place against China still. Some were removed during phase one, and some were not put in place that would have. But there are still tariffs in place for a lot of products, including a 25% tariff for two items that the hand sanitizer company, Purell, was using. So they've got one product that goes into their little hand dispenser, you know, the one you'd have at your home, and another one that would go into a dispenser that you'd find, say, at an airport. And so they were paying an additional 25%. This means that gets passed along to the consumer, and the prices were higher for Purell. It also, they said, had some impact on the supply. In other words, that they were having more difficulty getting it because of the 25% tariff. So we went to U.S. Trade Representative Bob Lighthizer. He understood immediately that this is a product that is part of responding to the coronavirus issue. So we worked through what's called an exclusion, basically a waiver of that 25%. And, you know, the idea is eventually, as you well know, Hugh, to bring this kind of production to America. But in the meantime, the Chinese have the patent on this particular part of this dispenser. And so we wanted to be sure that wasn't going to make it harder for us to respond to coronavirus. And Purell is a great Ohio company. They're running 3 shifts right now. You know, they're just going
Of
full
course.
bore trying to produce more hand sanitizer.
So that's good. Did Lighthizer get that lifted then? That's successfully done?
Yes,
Right.
that was done yesterday. And so, you know, that will help to have the cost a little bit lower for folks who can go to the store and get it. I would tell you, it's tough to get it at stores in Ohio because it's so badly needed. And one thing we're finding back here, Hugh, is that there are some businesses that are deemed essential. And God love them, they're in there working hard. You know, they're using social distance, they're using masks in some cases. But they've also got to use hand sanitizer. And some of these businesses have contacted me and said, hey, Rob, I want to stay open, but I got to have more hand sanitizer. So the Purell news is good. Also, the Procter & Gamble company in Cincinnati, Ohio, is now making hand sanitizer in some of their facilities, including, as I understand it, a perfume factory that's been converted to hand sanitizers. And they're providing 55-gallon drums of this, you know, to FEMA to be able to get out to companies and to healthcare providers. You know, to the frontline healthcare workers and others. So there's a lot of innovation going on right now in Ohio. You'd be proud of our Ohio citizens and our Ohio companies stepping up.
Oh my gosh, Battelle learning how to disinfect face masks. I mean, there's a lot that the Buckeye State's responsible for. Let me talk to you about our steel industry because I'm from the Steel Valley. And stainless steel is under assault from China. They're actually manipulating the tariff system from within. Are you aware of this problem? And is Ambassador Lighthizer, and are you working to get China out of our production system and yet protect stainless steel? I'm not a tariff guy. I'm a free trader, but they are just predators.
Yeah, and this is where I come down to, as you know, you and I have talked about this before. The idea of trade is a good one. You know, if a country makes it less expensively than you do, and good for consumers and everybody. The problem is China has not been playing by the rules. They've been cheating on trade. And so whether it's stainless or what they were doing with flat rolled steel, which is the stuff you use for everything from, you know, refrigerators to washing machines to automobiles, they were selling it at below their cost, dumping it. And so I did write legislation called Level the Playing Field Act, and it actually increased the ability to enforce our laws. And so now we have a 269% tariff, as an example, on some of the flat rolled steel from China because they were not playing by the rules. And same with stainless. So, you know, trade's got to be fair and free. And so we need to stand up for our industries. This is particularly true with regard to some of these products that are essential to our national security. I'd put steel up there as one of those because
stainless steel is to the medical industry as everything, and China has entered into this joint venture with ATI, and I just believe that they are masters at this. I look at the aviation industry repair business as well. Are we writing rules? Are you working with Treasury to make sure that the relief that was passed in phase three are going to go to actual American workers who are working on American airplanes as opposed to foreign subsidiaries getting taxpayer dollars?
Well, it's a good question, and that topic did come up when we talked about the funds that were needed to keep the airlines operating, and also the Boeing money and the other manufacturers who are in the supply chain. My answer is we've got an inspector general, as you know. The president just named one for all of this, and a lot of that focus is on the exchange stabilization fund and in particular the funding that's going to our national security companies. So you've inspired me, Hugh. I'm going to look into it even more closely with regard to that specific issue, but that's the idea, is that this money ought to be going for American companies and American citizens.
Now, Leader McConnell was on last week. He was skeptical of a rapid move to phase four. I am skeptical that if the Republican caucus in the Senate doesn't have its ideas on the table, we'll get rolled by Speaker Pelosi and a press which is just out of control at this point. I just don't think they're neutral at all. Do you think that we have to at least put some ideas on the table about what phase four, by we I mean center-right conservatives, what phase four ought to consist of?
Yes. I'm concerned that Speaker Pelosi has said publicly and is working privately on phase four legislation already. And as you know, the person who has the pen tends to have an advantage. Back in the days when you negotiated, you probably still do some of this in your legal practice. You want to have the pen. And so we've got to be sure that we have our own ideas on the table. I do think that Speaker Pelosi is responding to pressure she's getting from her membership because, as you know, phase three was largely a Senate product. But the fact is, we've got to be sure we aren't wasting money. I mean, we still have the debt deficit. I know interest rates are very low, and that's good right now to fund it. But we've got to be sure that we're spending money properly. And I think phase four right now ought to be worked on. We don't know exactly what's going to be in it, though. Let's let phase three first be implemented and see where the gaps are, because I think that's one thing we're going to have to do is look at what worked, what didn't work. Fine tuning might be the minimum we'll have to do. We might have to change some things substantially if, as an example, as you say, some money's going to the wrong places. But then second, by the time we get to phase four, Hugh, I'm hoping that we have the economy able to start to make a comeback. In other words, that there will be better information as to how many new infections there are every day, how many hospitalizations, maybe some work on this antibody medication, so that we have the ability to test people for antibodies and to see how we can get the economy moving again. If that's true, then it ought to be focused on real stimulus. And that means
I agree.
Filling the gaps, but also getting this economy moving again, because it's in free fall right now.
I just talked to your colleague, Senator Blackburn, about the fact that $2.2 trillion and barely a whisper for defense. I don't think we can do that again because our strategic adversary is China. But let me talk to you about something Speaker Pelosi has brought up, which is filling up the coffers of the public employee pension funds that have been devastated. Now, I understand there's a problem, but I also understand if that happens, there has to be some reform. One of those things, I don't believe a single public employee in the United States should make more than a colonel who has put in 25 years in the United States military, whether in the Marines or the Army or a captain in the Navy. I just think there's got to be a limit on this. If we're going to save state pension funds devastated by the market collapse, are you prepared to demand that they give us some reform?
Yes, and we're working on that also with regard to the multi-employer pension funding. The Democrats wanted to put that in at the last minute. I was for doing it, but only if there were reforms, because otherwise we're right back into the soup again. I mean, we're going to end up having ourselves bail out again and again unless we put reforms in place that are responsible. And on the public employee pension funds, there are some states that have done a good job. I would point to your home state of Ohio as an example with OPERS, where they've been more conservative about their projections, the so-called discount rate, where you assume kind of what the interest rate's going to be, and you make contributions based on that. So let's not discourage those who've done the right thing and encourage those who have done the wrong thing in terms of employee pensions.
Now, Senator, I want to put one more idea in your head. I've talked about it with a couple of your colleagues. There are trillions of dollars in retirement savings and tax advantaged accounts. If we allow people to use their own money, say at a 10% flat tax, they will be the most efficient stewards of their funds, more than the government. If you say, okay, you'll pay us a 10% flat tax if you take money out of a tax advantaged account, they will use it where they need it, and the government need not get involved. What do you think?
Well, I think generally a good idea. With regard to this particular crisis, we just passed legislation in phase 3 that allowed people to get out from under the 10% penalty if they need to access their 401k, as an example, to get through this crisis. And I'm all for savings, as you know. I think we're under saving still in this country. We need to do more in private retirement. But at a time like this, I think that is one of the most efficient ways to get the funding where it ought to go. Second, this issue of the minimum distribution you've got to make out of your retirement when you reach a certain age, 70 and a half, you got to start taking the money out and paying taxes on it. That required minimum distribution, we also postponed for this year. That's really important because otherwise folks are having to pull money out and pay taxes on it, and they have to pull it out at the value as of 12/31/19, so the end of last year, when the market was doing a whole lot better. So they're going to be paying taxes on value that's not there.
Those were both great things, but I also think a lot of Americans don't want to touch that money because they're going to bring it out at 28 or 15%, but they're going to have to. And if you have to go get your retirement money to keep your restaurant alive, I don't think we ought to tax you at 28% because of the condition. I think a 10% flat tax would bring money in, but also not crush people because it really is. Nobody wants to get that money out, right? It's tax advantage, but some people need to get it.
Right. Well, Hugh, I think that's something we ought to look at in phase 4. So not only not having a penalty, but if it's your money and it's in a tax advantage account of some kind, and there are a number of them, including education, healthcare, retirement, then there would be a flat tax attached to it. Well, that may be helpful.
Senator, are you working from Ohio via conference call, or are you working from D.C. via small meetings?
I got in my pickup truck and drove back to Ohio as soon as I could, and I'm here working in Ohio today. I've got a live Facebook town hall. I've got 2 or 3 other videos that I'm doing, and then I've got 5 TV interviews with local, TV here in Ohio to get the word out as to how people can take advantage of the new SBA program. What's happening in terms of the overall coronavirus issue here in Ohio, and so we're just trying to stay in touch with people as best we can to help them. And then second, I'm doing a lot with Ohio companies, as you indicated, whether it's Purell or Battelle or Cardinal Health or Procter & Gamble. We've got so many companies in Ohio that want to get engaged and involved and help more, and I'm trying to knock down some of the federal barriers for them to do that, and have been pretty successful in helping there. There are 3 innovative manufacturers, as an example, right now who want to help on ventilators, and these are small manufacturers who have a lot of expertise in manufacturing. They brought in medical experts to help them on the ventilators. They want to help. They're not looking to make money, but they are looking to help, and that's exciting too. So I'm trying to be helpful.
Senator Rob Portman, keep up the good fight. Send Rob Portman on Twitter. He's doing the right thing. I'll be right back. Don't forget, relieffactor.com during the break. I'll tell you about it on the other side as well. Go to relieffactor.com. Get your package.